Hey everyone, we got a really exciting project announced for you guys today. We've teamed up with Snaxan, Santa Monica Studios, and Sony to create a custom God of War Ragnarök Nornir chess PC. Now this is going to be a ton of work between the two studios. We're going to build most of the project here and then pass it off to Sarah for the system integration and then deliver it together to Santa Monica Studios. It's going to be a ton of work, so let's just jump right in and get started. Santa Monica Studios provided us with these amazing 3D models. It's really key at this step that we get our measurements right, because any false step at this point could really throw things off down the road. We needed to build portions of the base first before we can get those exact internal measurements over to Sarah so she can start the internals of her portion of the build. I took the lid into NetFab and split it into 8 individual parts, ensuring that most of the parts will fit onto our print bed, and then begun the 3D printing process. Post-processing the 3D prints is probably the most time-consuming but most necessary part of 3D printing. We're seaming all the parts together with 5-minute epoxy and our plastic welder. On the front of the chest, there's 2 ornamental pieces. There's the horses and the head. We printed those out and started the post-processing on those parts as well. I sanded everything down with 120 grit sandpaper, moving up to a finer grit of 320. We also added in some spot putty and Bondo for some of those pesky seams. I'm mixing up a 2-part epoxy clay. This is Magic Sculpt, and I'm sculpting in the finer details into the 3D print. Some of the holes that are left over from decimating the files are still visible, so we're filling those in as well. The overall Nornir chest has a stone finish to it, and we're going to use a plaster mix to simulate that stone texture and apply it over the top of the lid. I'm using a piece of broken styrofoam and pressing it into the wet plaster to simulate the stone look, as well as carving in cracks and grooves with my sculpting tools. Now that the plaster is cured, I've gone in with a 320 grit paper and smoothed out any rough edges. We need to start on the base of the Nornir chest now. This is probably the most important part of the build because it's really going to determine what our inside dimensions are, and we need to line it with timber to ensure the structural integrity of the entire PC. I'm taking careful measurements here and transferring those measurements over to my timber that's going to make up the wooden frame. The base will also act as the floor of the PC, so I want to make sure everything is level and plumb. To give the base more support, I'm going to add in some cross braces. I'm gluing everything up and securing everything with 2-inch brad nails and 3.5-inch wood screws. I'm adding construction adhesive to the wooden base and then securing the wooden frame to the 3D printed base. I'm using 5-inch lag bolts and bolting everything together through the outside. The screw holes will be covered with epoxy sculpt in a later step. During this video montage, enjoy this beautiful music of God of War Ragnarök composed by Barry McCrary. Sarah's planning to run two 240mm radiators on each end of the Nornir chest. She laser cut a rad bracket and sent it to us for mock-up purposes, and now we're centering it into the wall so the radiators are perfectly placed. She also sent us her motherboard tray along with the standoffs that she plans to use, and we're double checking all the measurements and making sure there's no obstruction or conflicts with our internal measurements. Our early work in the design phase has really paid off. All the measurements are lining up and the tolerances are within what we need. Now we can move on to assembling the case. I'm positioning the power supply in its location and testing the guide rails. I position the lid on top of the case, and with a laser level I'm making sure everything is leveled and center. I'm doing the same on the sidewalls for the radiator brackets. Sarah also printed the dragons, the rings, and the corner pieces. Now we can do a final mock-up before we move into the plaster and painting phases. Now I can take final measurements of the interior walls and get those over to Sarah so she can start her portion of the PC. We're adding the same plaster effect that we did on the lid to the main body of the chest. This is a pretty time-consuming part because we need to build this up in layers, and each layer takes a day or so to dry. Sarah also printed these fine detail ornate pieces that surround the case, and we applied those as well. The deadline is fast approaching and we need to finish this up pretty soon. Now it's time to bring the God of War Ragnarök Nornir chest to life. The painting process is always my favorite part of any project. It's when you see your hard work all come together. We started with several coats of a flat black base coat and moved up to a lighter gray. Now we're dry brushing the finish over the top with a little bit of white mixed into our base coat. That plaster effect that we applied earlier is really coming to life now, and that stone texture is starting to pop. We base coated all the gold pieces in an antique gold and then did a dark wash over the top of the finished piece, and then went in with our highlight gold just to make the edges pop. We applied the same effect over the main body of the Nornir chest and repeated all the same processes. Enjoy this beautiful track, Giantus of Ironwood by Barry McCrary, while I finish up the painting process. We're in the final steps of the construction of the Nornir chest. Sarah's going to be here in a few days to pick up the PC, so we got to have this ready. There's still a lot of things to do, including adding the static moss over the entire chest. This step was requested by Sony and Sarah. They wanted to feel like the chest was pulled from the God of War world. A white PVA glue is laid down, and then we use a static grass applicator with a 12mm grass and a static charge to apply the grass. We're adding the final touches now, securing the power supply bracket. We also laser cut a back plate for the power supply shroud. Sarah lost her beloved dog Colt during this build process. We painted a paw print on the back of the case to honor his memory. We mounted the radiator bracket and also installed LED lights behind the runes to illuminate them in a soft blue glow. Final paint touches are added with a final weathering pass. We mounted the dragons along with the lid to the top of the Nornir chest and applied the stone face to the front of the lid. Now the Nornir chest is complete. This project was an absolute joy to bring to life, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Special thanks to our sponsor MSI, and of course Sony, Santa Monica Studios, and Snaxan for trusting us with their beloved IP. If you guys want to see more projects like this, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be notified on any future updates.